Welcome to the Connected Conversation with Brett Hill, a well-known mindfulness and somatic coach and coach trainer, as he demonstrates the power of mindful communication to change your life, work, and the world. Disconnected is the new normal. People are feeling overdriven, overwhelmed, and disconnected from meaningful conversations. But it doesn't have to be that way. Step into a life that works for you. Flourish and give voice to your natural creativity and purpose as you learn how to connect deeply and authentically with yourself, others, and the world. The Connected Conversation with Brett Hill starts now.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Connected Conversation. I'm Brett Hill, a mindful somatic coach, and I specialize in mindful communications and coaching other coaches as well as individuals to be more present and mindful in their interactions with others. Take a breath and pause myself right this moment, because this particular show is focused on a super important point. One of the key things that I teach that up-levels everything about your life, everything about your engagement with other people, about your career, about your relationships. And it's something that we just don't do in this culture at all, really. And it's certainly even applauded and celebrated to not honor and our actual nature in a certain way by just overdriving this particular need. I'm talking about the natural, organic need to transition. This is something that we just do not even recognize in this country. Just think about the last movie you saw where some guy's in a giant car wreck or some huge explosion happens, the building collapses, they, escape by the skin of their teeth, they break out of the underwater cage just in time, and they just, or they nearly drown, they come to the surface, they get off to the beach, and then somebody comes and goes, "How you doing? You okay?" "Oh yeah, I'm fine." They get up and walk away as if nothing happened. In reality, it's not like that. And while those are obviously overly dramatic scenarios, there are representative of the micro dramatic scenarios that we have every single day. When you get up in the morning and the first thing in your head is, "I've got to get moving," that's just a little small version of the same situation. And it might be true, you do have to get moving, but that's not the point. The point here is the underlying connection. Remember, this is the connected conversation. What are you connected to? Connected to go, 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 get things done, drive, 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 jam more into my day, have more experiences, have more powerful experiences, like a never-ending stream of over-the-top experiences, which is the way the world is organized these days. Everything is extreme and extremely hooky. And if you just look at the headlines, they all have gigantic big words, and they're designed to shock your system into paying attention. And we have our whole lives these days are filled with a never-ending stream of this kind of outside in, big dramatic extreme experiences coming your way, and then inside out generating these experiences, driving to work for 30 minutes in crazy traffic, getting in meeting after meeting after meeting, coming home and dealing with super complex scenarios at home. And by that, I mean ordinary life. Oh, insurance, taxes, relationships, food, fixing the house, dealing with the car, dealing with, whatever you got to deal with. There's a lot. There is a lot. And so I'm going to invite us all, just right this moment, just to take a breath and go, whoa. Take a breath. And for the next minute, whatever you're doing, wherever you are, the only thing you have to do is be present with this voice. If you're wherever you're listening, you don't have to get anything done. If you're driving or something, then pay attention to what you're doing. But do the best you can, just pay attention to your senses. By that, I mean like notice something with your eyes, like a tree or a color or something. If you're inside, maybe even something mundane, a chair or a picture, just notice, just look. Notice the shape, the texture, the color. Just for a moment, disconnect from the stream of gotta get it done. And check in maybe with your body. Here's a secret. The body is always in the moment. The body is always in the moment. That's a really, really big deal. It sounds like, well, so what? But yeah, that means that when you're going wild with all your thoughts and the things that are in your life that are dragging you out of having a moment that actually feels good, your body's connected to something different. Your body's connected to what's happening right now. And you can drop into that. And your body's not worried about your taxes or your job or what you look like, or are you impressive enough, or do you have cool enough shoes or fast enough car. Connect to that experience. What is going on right now? You tense. This is why most meditation practices and mindfulness practices have you focus on your breath to begin with. Take a breath and you just relax for a moment. Take a breath and you just relax for a moment. Take a breath and you just relax. Just for a moment. Maybe notice if your jaw is tight, is your tongue up against the top of your mouth. Most people don't notice that. And pay attention then to what now comes into your senses when you begin to direct your attention to your own experience instead of what to do. And in this way, you connect to what is true for you, what you're experiencing now, rather than where do I need to go? What do I need to do? What do I have to get done? And it matters immensely. Not that you want to spend, obviously you have to think, you have to plan, yes, but you'll spend your whole life doing that and never actually check in to see how you feel about that. And this is how people get driven into burnout or wake up 20 years after doing this and go, remember that old Talking Head song, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. How did I get here? Not knowing how you got there because you weren't paying attention. You're connected to somebody else's agenda for what your life should be. What's true for you? All of this is built into the power of transitions. Think about this for a moment. We tend to treat ourselves as if we were not organic beings, and I'll explain what I mean by that. We tend to treat ourselves as if we were computers instead of bundles of chemistry and electricity. If you could bake a cake, for example, in a binary way, you would put a cake in the oven, flip a switch, and it'd be done. Or you could flip more switches and it'd be done faster. But cakes don't work like that, right? You can't turn up the heat and make it cook faster. There's a process involved. It simply takes time. There's chemistry involved. It takes time for the materials to reach a certain temperature, for certain chemical reactions to occur, for the materials to evolve from the state of, in the case of a cake, like a cake batter, to a baked cake with this, bread-like. There's a process involved, and you cannot make that process go faster than the chemistry permits. We're like that. We're a lot more like that than we think. When you start to eat, let's say you're hungry, and you sit down and you start to eat, and a very common thing they'll tell you when you're learning to diet is slow things down, because you will overeat, because you can shove food in your mouth faster than your body can realize that you're full. And so we've all done this, right? You eat and you keep eating, and you're realizing objectively you're going, I'm kind of putting in a lot into my mouth here, and I still don't quite feel like I'm quite full yet. But actually, if you stopped, your full sensors, the chemistry that causes you to feel full, would catch up to what's actually happening. It takes time for that chemistry in your system, for that signal, for the enzymatic signals in your stomach to send the signals to your brain that, hey, got enough going on down here. And at that point, you will stop, and you'll put down the fork and you'll go, okay, I'm done now. You'll reach a point where your brain just says, I'm organically done. I can't do any more. That's, a signal that you can't override very easily. You could at your own risk, right? You could overeat to the point of being ill or even damaging, but you'd have to be willful about it. Versus what if you just ignored that signal? You just kept on, you'd be in the hospital, right? But for some reason, when it comes to overwork or overstress, we do override that same body-based signal that, hey, you're stressed. You need to rest. You need to take time for yourself. We don't honor the need to simply pay attention to what is happening in our day-to-day lives enough that we can just go, I'm gonna press pause here and transition between states, between activities, so that I can pay attention to what I truly need. What do I actually need to do? Does this feel good? Does this feel bad? I need to rest. I need to take a break. I need to go outside. I need to move. I need to exercise. Your body will tell you all this stuff. The body knows. This kind of information is what they call somatic. Soma is the root word, body-based. It's about the mind-body connection. And in many ways, we're very disconnected from our bodies in this culture. Way, way too much thinking about futures and ruminating about the past. And you spend your entire life there. And if you're ever involved in those kinds of thoughts in your head, then you don't feel connected to what's actually going on. You can just stop connecting with your body and find a way back to now. And we'll talk more about this after the break. Hello and welcome back to The Connected Conversation. I'm your host, Brett Hill, a mindful somatic coach. You can find out more about the work that I'm doing at theconnectedconversation.com, which is the main website for this particular podcast, and themindfulcoach.com, which is my main website, which has links to my other work and some articles that I use all the time, as well as a how to start a mindful meditation practice and a bunch of other good content there. So check that out, themindfulcoach.com. We were talking about transitions and the power of transitions to actually literally change your life. And Oh my God, I wish I could, just infuse people with this knowledge, this experience, as it is so powerful that it will help you see things that you never saw before. It will help you meet your next moment with a lot more resilience and capacity, intelligence, literally, and freedom. And I'll talk about what that means in a moment. The capacity to make better choices about what's going on. So before the break, I was talking about, baking the cake and using our systems. We have organic systems. And by that, I mean that we simply we have certain kinds of chemistry going on in our neurology, in our brains, in our stomach, and the systems that create all the means by which we respond to life, that take time for that chemistry to have an impact. And in this world, we're so rushed and we're so encouraged to continue a life to adopt and sustain a life that is really just push, that we never notice the consequences of that. There's so much focus on be productive, get to the end zone, hit the winning goal, do the extremes thing, be the person who works the hardest and the best idea. We have so much messaging around the effort that it takes to succeed and to be happy. All you have to do is turn on television, watch a commercial for 5 commercials, and you'll see that all the happy people have the best things. You're driving the best car and you've got the latest stuff. And so really you're pushed to believe that success is measured by objects. And it's measured by the amount of praise that people heap upon you and the way that people look at you. And you wear your success, you drive your success, you boat in your success. It's like that's what success is. Well, we're all familiar with the stories of wealthy people and famous people who are pretty deeply unhappy. And you don't have to look too far to find many, many thousands of references to, having things, achievement is not directly correlated to you being a happy person. And what I mean by that, yeah, there is a correlation, but I will say it's not a requirement. Let me give you an example. Can a person be really poor or ill and be happy? Just as a thought experiment, right? One of my role models, Nelson Mandela, the ex-president of South Africa, who was imprisoned for a very long time. I use this guy as an example all the time because of the standard that he kept, which was he was in prison and they used to beat him and torture him in prison. And his concern was not that his biggest concern in all of that, he said after he was released and later became president, was that he would learn to hate his captors. Wow. Well, what? That is a level beyond, right? Where you're in prison unjustly, they're torturing you. And your concern is, I don't want to hate these people. That's like Christ level sort of mentality, right? Father, forgive them for they know not what they do, sort of thing. And that's a very easy thing to say and a very hard thing to do. He told a story later of, which I also fully appreciated, when he was president, excuse me, and he was at a restaurant eating with his staff or some, his bodyguards and all, and he saw across the room one of the prison guards who used to beat him. And the guy, of course, was being very nervous because he realized earlier that Nelson Mandela was in the room before Nelson Mandela noticed the guard. So he's like eating very nervously. He's like, oh my God, Nelson Mandela's here. Well, he's in power and I'm, I did a lot of horrible things to this guy. What's he going to do to me? And Nelson Mandela told one of his staff, says, go get that guy and have him sit over here at my table. And he brought the guy over and had him sit at the table. And the guy is like, freaking out, like, managing himself, but like, oh my God, what's he going to do to me? Because I'm guilty of these horrific ethical crimes. And Nelson Mandela just talked to him normally and then said goodbye. And somebody asked him, said, well, who was that guy? He says, well, he was a prison guard who used to beat me. And that's when he told the story about how he had this agenda, this goal, this objective to not hate them. And he just wanted to let the guy know, that he's not in danger. And I thought, that's just a level beyond, right? So, and this question is, what's he connected to, right? Is it fear, retribution, hate that is so prevalent and celebrated? How many times do you see movie after movie, plot after plot, revenge? I'm going to get, and that's justice. That's like, I'm going to get even. But rather going for a higher order, going for a deeper connection to something like, I can be different because I want to have a different experience. It's not even that you do something like that because it's the best thing for the world. It's more like, what moment do you want to have? Do you want to live in a place where you're walking around feeling like you're the victim of injustice? And you may very well be, but is that the experience that you want to have every moment so that you're driven to get revenge? And that's your day-to-day experience. That becomes what you're connected to. Or would you rather connect to a different experience? I'm someone who's connected to peace, love, justice, truth, beauty. And those things don't change because of my moment. The things that are happening outside of me don't disconnect me from that, because that's the experience that I want to have. And this goes even deeper. If you truly, truly go deep into your experience of now, really deep, like Eckhart Tolle talks about, the experience of being, you'll find that it's not just an experience of truth, love, justice, beauty. That's what you are. That's what emanates out of your being. That's what animates your very life. And we hang on it, we adorn it with all these other things of, ego and achievement, and I have to possess things. I have to have certain kinds of recognition. We adorn our expression, our manifestation with these things, and we live as if those adornments are the drivers and the motive force. But really, what's happening is something more at a deeper level, more profound than that. That's choosing what you're connected to. That is such a powerful way of walking through the world. And the way you can begin to do that is just like I mentioned. You can begin by honoring transitions. And how do you begin to do that? Where do you even start with that? You start with very, very simple things. Oh, God, such a big story to tell about this. Honoring transitions and beginning to notice what you might call impressions, the world of impressions. There's a big truck outside here. You can probably hear it in the background. Sorry about that. The first thing you do when you step outside is you notice, what does it feel like to be outside? Like, wait, what? But you ever notice what it's like to step from one room into another. Just try it out. It's so simple, and it's going to feel very strange, but that's because it's unusual to you and not because it is strange. But you literally just walk through a threshold from one room into another and notice if it feels different to you. Walking from a room into a hall, from a hall into a bigger room, from a bigger room to outside. What changes in your senses? It does change. I've studied this extensively in my own senses, and I'm not a unique human being in that way. My nervous system is very much like everyone else's. We all have brains. We all have parasympathetic, sympathetic, limbic systems that are connected to, our emotions. There's so much more here, and we'll talk about it in some depth with the Connected Conversation. I'm Brett Hill, your host, and we'll be back after this break. Hello, and welcome back to the Connected Conversation. I'm your host, Brett Hill. We were talking about the power, the uncelebrated power of learning to transition and literally moving from one space into another and noticing the changes that has on you is a really great way to practice. When you begin to learn to practice these kinds of sensitivities and awarenesses, it's important to have unintrusive, simple ways to study the impacts of this learning. And so one of the things that I had learned in a community that I was in where we were studying the practice of what we call impressions. And very, very, in a very refined, very intense way, paying attention to the impact on your senses of different kinds of experiences. And so just literally walking through space is something we take for granted because, we do it our whole lives. And so we just, we get up and we walk around. For example, the impact of just being this is a kind of an esoteric thing, but the impact of being in the field of gravity. Like, wait, what? Yeah, I know. But consider every human being on the planet has lived in a gravity field their entire life. And we just take it for granted that, when you get up, you have weight, that when you let go of a cup, it falls. That's just a universal human experience. And because it's a universal human experience, the only time you notice something like that is when you see a picture of an astronaut letting go of something and it just floats there. And you're going, a different kind of experience is actually possible in the universe. And it's actually possible all over the place in the universe because there are different kinds of fields of gravity, right? There's big ones and weak ones and non-existent ones. And so things are different in different places. But for here on the planet, the universal experience it just is. And as a result, you don't notice it because our nervous systems are like that. Otherwise, every time you stood up, you'd be going, whoa, I have weight. It'd be like a new thing, right? And we're like, what's that? And things fall. You go, wow, that thing fell. Well, no, after you figure it out, after you learn to tie a shoe, you don't have to figure it out every time because our nervous systems do that for us. They take things that are familiar and they push them into the background. So much so that they become things that you don't even notice. And so if you want to notice something, you have to make an effort to. You have to notice, okay, what's it like for me to stand on my feet? What's it like to move with weight? What is it like that everything in the world on the earth has a weight? Well, that's a strange question to ask, but it's an important question because it's a part of our everyday experience. What other kinds of things are part of our everyday experience? Well, you walk out from your front door or your car or transportation, you get out, you look up into the world, and you come from a very small confined space in a car or bus or train, and you step out into a space where there's no roof. There's just sky between you and outer space. That's a pretty wild idea, actually, if you think about it, that there's absolutely no barriers between you and outer space but the sky. And I don't want to connect to the idea of it. I want you to connect to the experience of stepping from a confined space into an unencumbered space. Your body is having an experience, whether or not you're noticing it. And so I'm encouraging you to pay attention to that experience. Give yourself a moment to transition. So when I step out of my house, I pause. I look at the sky. I notice what it looks like. I feel my body responding to, oh, I'm in a bigger space. The sky is so gray, beautiful, sunsetty, sunrisey, whatever's going on, cloudy, and notice the wind, notice the temperature, noticing those things somatically and their impact on you. How do they make you feel? How do you respond to those things? Now, why does this matter? It matters because this is the way you incorporate your body into your mind and your body-mind connection. You rehydrate. This is a way. There are many others, but this is a way you can rehydrate your body-mind connection in such a way that you connect to the information that your body, remember, that your body is telling you. Remember this story about, I told earlier, when you're eating so much and you wind up overeating because it takes a while, there's a lag. Well, this helps you pay attention earlier to the signal that, oh yeah, I'm actually on the way to full, so I'm going to stop. And I know that because I'm paying attention to my body. So you don't overeat. This goes deeper. Let's say that you're so driven at work that you're approaching burnout, and this is an epidemic. Do you want to wait till you're in the hospital? Do you want to wait till you have a collapse? Do you want to wait till you can't get out of bed anymore until you realize that you have to make a change? What is it that's going to flip the switch for you to cause you to go, this is unsustainable? If I continue to do this, I'm going to break. You can wait till you break, or you can pay attention to the early warning signals that your body is telling you all along, but you're just overdriving them. When you start to pay attention to the small, subtle signals like moving from room to room, stepping outside, noticing what it feels like to be speaking to someone, noticing what it feels like to put on a certain kind of clothing that you like, letting yourself appreciate the sensations of your very life. Then whenever you start to get into these scenarios that this I'm being overdriven, your body tells you that, and you go, you know what? I know I cannot continue this before you have a breakdown. And that leads you to help you make better decisions. Someone approaches you and starts to give you a really hard time, and you just plow through it and you argue and you walk away and you're busy, you're angry for days and you're griping at everybody around you. Your people that you're working with are unhappy. Everybody starts to be unhappy because you're unhappy and they're unhappy. And suddenly you're living in this field of anxiety and resentment and anger and frustration. That has a consequence. You can try to push your way through that and say, well, this is just the way things are. Or you can make some choices. You can change your relationship to these things by saying, I don't want to have that experience, and I'm going to have a different one. Nelson Mandela is a good example there, right? Choosing the experience he wants to have. That doesn't mean you make it okay that there's abusive scenarios going. No, you make a decision that you're either going to change it or you're going to change your relationship to it. But you can't just endure and expect things to work out, because they won't. Something's going to break. And you don't want it to be you. But you want to be able to have clear boundaries and enforce them before a violation occurs, right? That's what that's about. So having intelligence around how you transition between moments of your life helps you with all these other moments of your life. And so you can use the same sort of practice to do lots of things. When I begin my sessions with people, I start with a transition. And this for me, as much as my clients, I'll say, let's just take a moment. I call it gathering my bits. I have a technical background, so I use terms like bits, gathering my bits. So it's like, take a moment, check in with myself, and literally just take a moment to check in. And I'm inviting you to do this too. Just take a moment right now, check in with yourself, and let yourself become more present. And I ask this question: what's true for you now? What's it like for you to be you right now? And we're just going to give this about 10 seconds. What's it like for you to be you? Don't judge it. Just let it be so. Take a breath, relax. Connect to what's true for you. Now, for some of you, that's a relaxing, pleasant experience. And for other people, it's like, I don't even want to go there. It's like, nope, no, not going in there. And, God bless if that's the case. It doesn't obviate the need to do that, but instead you can, instead of checking in with yourself inwardly, maybe you want a different practice, like check in with the sky, check in with the things that you like. I have a whole practice in my work I call noticing what lights you up, like noticing the things that you feel good about. Let yourself be in connection, connected conversation. What are you connected to? Connection with the things that you like. And letting yourself feel yourself in rapport to that. And how does that change your experience of who you are and your life? So honoring these transitions and intentionally, and this is really super important, intentionally bringing those transitions into your world. And you have to do this when you're not under stress. You can't wait till the fire happens, till you're in the hospital, till the breakdown happens, till the breakup happens, till the layoff happens, right? You can't wait to then to begin to decide to practice. You have to do this before these things happen. I have a saying that I say a lot, which is, if you want to be mindful under stress, you have to practice when you're not. And this is, to kind of do the big reveal, this is a mindfulness practice. Straight up mindfulness, paying attention on purpose in the moment, non-judgmentally, to use John Kabat-Zinn's definition. Letting yourself be present with your experience in this moment, on purpose, underscore, bold, highlight, non-judgmentally. And so stepping out on outside, deciding, I'm going to pay attention to what it feels like now. And that's on purpose and in the moment. And when you're paying attention to how beautiful the sky is, you're not going, oh, I'd like to make it a little more orange over here. Oh, is this just like the sky I saw in Colorado one time? That's not the face forward idea. That's not what happens immediately. Immediately, it's more like, whoa. That's what you're connecting to. We'll be back after the break. Hello and welcome back to the Connected Conversation. I'm your host, Brett Hill, and we're talking today about transitions. So powerful. And I'm really spending this entire episode on this one thing because this is what I call a foundational practice. And with a foundational practice, it's the kind of thing you almost can't talk about enough. When I was in technology, I used to teach all kinds of stuff like web server security. And there were some basic practices which I would always go over with people. And after years and years of doing that, it became clear, there's these basic practices that you just have to know. You just have to get them together. And when you have these basic practices together, it makes so much more possible. But you have to have the foundations. So this is a foundational practice. I'll tell you a story about how I learned about this notion of foundational practices and why they matter so much. When I lived in Boulder, there was a Aikido master there named Hiroshi. He was at the time 5th degree black belt in Aikido, or 5th Dan, they called him. And he was one of the only in the world. And he taught, now I had a martial arts training background, but I wasn't in Aikido. And so he opened a course called Aikido Movement. Now, at the time, I was also doing some other work with Gabriel Roth and ecstatic dance, and then also contact improvisation. So I was into movement because that's a very in the moment sort of experience when you're doing movement with other people. And I thought, oh my gosh, this would be so fun to go learn from an Aikido master how to move. So it wasn't about how to do, punches, kicks, or that kind of thing. It was really about movement. And so I was very into that. So I walked in and he started showing us this movement where you turn in a circle 360 degrees and you just turn and you turn. And he would say, pay attention. You want your conscious, you want to be alert the whole time you are turning. You want to notice everything while you're turning. And then also in your body in the center, there was a lot to this really simple motion. And he said something that really, really grabbed me. Now, here we are, I'm talking to one of the most experienced people in the world on this particular method. And he said this, he said, if you master this one thing, you will learn all of Aikido. And I thought, wait, what? Huh? You mean, how can that be? And it's because this one motion has so much in it that if you were to break down all the things in it, the movement, the center, the attention, the awareness, that you basically bring yourself into a state of being in a relationship to movement, that the whole rest of it just becomes natural. It all becomes just a spontaneous learning. Now, I would question a little, there's actual technique involved, like turn right at this moment, move your hand in this specific way. And perhaps he means that all of that just emerges out of your body organically. And I don't know. I have a few stories to tell about that. There is such a thing as organic knowledge in the body. But the point here is that he was saying everything's built into this one thing. And I thought, oh my gosh, what else is like that in the world? And it didn't take long for me to understand that there are foundational practices all over the place, that if you just learn to do the one thing and you really, really, really got it together and learned that so much more would emerge from it. This is the notion, because our brains work that way. It's transferable knowledge. When you're a musician, I was thinking about this yesterday, when you're a musician, you begin to relate to the world harmonically, musically, rhythmically. I was on a ferry from Bremerton to Seattle the other day, and there's those things have gigantic engines, and it's all, the ferries are big metallic machines on the water, right? And so this huge engine is underneath this ferry, and I'm standing there at the lower level looking out over the water, and it's got this rhythm going. It's really this loud rhythm. It's almost like if you could take a microphone up to some busker or street player who is like playing garbage can pails or something. This was giant metal and doing it really expertly. It had this fabulous rhythm going. And I'm going, wow, I'm rocking out to the rhythm of the ferry boat engine. And I'm going, this is really musical. I used to be a musician, so I noticed these kinds of musical rhythmic stuff all over the place. The brain just does that. It just notices these patterns once you learn them. So they're built in, it's built into capability. So I also had an experience when I learned chess. I used to play tournament chess. I wasn't very good at it, but I enjoyed it. And I found out that by learning to conceptually move the pieces around on the board, I got good at other things that I didn't expect. When I started to move my apartment one day, I realized I could stand in the room and I could envision how to move all the furniture in a way. It's kind of like one of those puzzles where you have to move one piece to move another. You move. I could just imagine it, this piece sliding this way, then this goes out and this other one goes in. And it wasn't obvious how to do it. If you just walked in the room and said, how do I do this? But in my head, I could work it out pretty easily. And I knew that that was a skill that had unexpectedly been developed by learning to play chess, because it's such a spatial game. And working all that time in working out spatial mechanics of chess helped me work out spatial dynamics in other scenarios. So there's this notion of transferable knowledge. And so this idea of transitions, when you go and you learn to transition from your door to outside, from your car to outside, from outside into the car, from one room into another, from one meeting to another, from one type of meeting, from walking around in your house to being in a Zoom meeting, from doing whatever you're doing to sitting down and eating. All these things are moments of transitions. And giving yourself, honoring the natural, organic need to give your body time to catch up to what's actually occurring, so that you don't overdrive what you need, because the brain can do things quickly, quick. And the body is slower than that in some ways. Now, it's actually true that the body's faster than the brain, but only only when you get the brain out of the way. Meaning that if you talk to an athlete, they'll tell you, you can't think about that shot. You just have to do it, right? You have to get the brain out of the way. But what I mean by letting the body catch up is like the chemistry of the engagement that you're in. Like, I'm coming off the street and now I'm going to do something else. And I want to give myself a breath to transition into this new activity, to give my senses time to reorganize into a new mode. By doing that, you honor yourself. You bring the innate knowledge of your body's wisdom into consciousness, into awareness, so that it becomes actionable. It becomes something you can say, I am going to do A instead of B because B is not feeling so good. And I know that because I've been choosing B, and I have to do something different if I want a different outcome. This way you make better choices. Your relationships improve. Your jobs improve. The conversations you have improve. This is about the connected conversation. And when you're talking to somebody, you transition into the conversation. I give myself a breath to notice who I'm talking to and what it feels like to be talking to them. And when you do that, it's a tremendous gift to the other person. And I don't have to tell them I'm doing it. I just do it because I've chosen to be in the conversation. And so I'm going to honor my own choice. I'm going to talk to this person. I'm going to bring myself to it. And that means paying attention to my experience and responding with a more full set of resources up and down the stack, to use a technical term, my body information, my somatic information, my emotional, my spiritual information. People who know me also know I'm a pretty intuitive guy. I actually have a class on, or not a class, but a meeting on intuition that meets every 2 weeks. And the field of intuition depends on you being, well, I should say your awareness of intuition depends on you having those kinds of, creating the space for that information to surface. So connecting to what your experience is how intuition can lay over as well. So all of this is built into the practice of transitions. And so, my friends, if I could wish something for you, if I could wish something for you that would change your life, that would bring you to understanding how to be more present and skillful in your world and have a better connection to what is true and meaningful for you, I would say look into this world of transitions that we are just blowing through right now. We're just not even giving it the time of day often. And slow it down enough that you begin to notice these many, many times in our days where we can benefit from learning to pay attention to what is happening for you in these in-between states. This way you honor yourself and you give yourself a chance to connect to what is actually true and real. And what else do we need in the world that is more than that? Connecting, so that when we talk with each other, we can have a connected conversation that's not just about what to do, where to go, who am I, who are you, but who am I in a deeper way, connecting person to person and even soul to soul. And if you'd like to find out more about this, you can find the other episodes of The Connected Conversation wherever you enjoy your podcast. And you can also find out more about my work at themindfulcoach.com. If you are a coach or a helping professional in the world, someone who helps other people, and you'd like to meet other people that are like that, go to mindfulcoachassociation.com. That's mindfulcoachassociation.com, and create a free profile there to list your services. And you'll be invited to meetings where you can meet your colleagues and we can talk about what's it like to be someone who helps other people on the planet. And that way we can support each other and do this good work of helping us all be connected to what's important and powerful. So with that, I'd like to thank you for showing up for the show. Leave a comment and like the show. It helps us and matters a lot. I really appreciate you listening. So this is Brett Hill with The Connected Conversation. Thank you now.
Thank you for joining us today on The Connected Conversation with Brett Hill on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Tune in next time to experience the power of mindful communication to bring deeper meaning to your life, work, and the world. Brett is here to help you step into a life that works for you, to help you flourish and give voice to your natural creativity and purpose. See you here next time on The Connected Conversation to learn how to enjoy the experience of your moment-to-moment life. For more information, visit theconnectedconversation.com.